Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining us. We have Arnold Leitner, founder and CEO of YouSolar. Arnold, welcome to the show.
Michael, thanks for having me on again.
My pleasure. All right, your past professional and entrepreneurial experience was in, counter and utility scale solar power. How did you come to found YouSolar?
There has been a realization that on my part that if we want to expand solar energy further to the market, we need to take advantage of its key characteristic, which is the ability to produce energy almost anywhere in small scale. So utility scale solar, as successful and relevant as it is today, especially in emerging markets like India where gigawatts are being built, it ultimately runs against the grain of what's best about solar, being able to deploy it in small sizes directly where people live. So that got me going of thinking, what is the best way to get that out into the market? And of course, we know residential rooftop solar as we know it, but we also know it runs to limits, such that it requires the interconnection with the utility, and there's these issues related to producing too much energy during the daytime that affects the local distribution system. So all of that led me to think of where should things go next.
Now, we hear a lot about solar batteries, and where do you see the market for combining solar with the batteries?
The wonderful thing, and that's an excellent question about solar and batteries, is that it's somewhat like yin and yang. See, solar is a great energy source. There's actually more than people realize. It's not, a weak form of energy, often thought of as, just barely able to run an LED light. It's actually quite abundant in the terms of energy, but what's missing is its power. So a home, for example, that has a 5 kilowatt solar array, which is nice and sizable, would produce all the energy for a typical home over the course of a year, but would fall about a factor of 4 short of the instantaneous power that home requires. For example, if you turn on a vacuum cleaner or you run an air conditioner at the same time. And that's where the battery comes in. So the battery is not only a place to store your energy so you can run it obviously at night, but it's also the source of power. And with that, your solar battery system can kind of discouple from the utility system and be both the source of your energy and the source of instantaneous power, which otherwise, for all these grid-tied systems that you and I are so familiar with in California and elsewhere, that source to utility. And now with the battery, you become basically independent of the grid.
Got it. And what I'm wondering about is these battery life cycles. I think that is a point of contention with a lot of people in this industry sector. Are you seeing that the life cycles are being able to be extended in the new technology that you're working with and you're dealing with as we go forward? Because that has been the big stopping point as to be able to store the the energy before it goes into use again.
Yes, batteries are expensive. So what you need to do is you need to take advantage of them where they're most valuable. And yes, there are abilities, there are ways to do centralized storage on the grid, and there you leverage the economies of scale, you get to pretty low costs. When you come to the home battery, say, the systems people are familiar with, the products by Tesla or Sonnen or by YouSolar, you have a relatively high cost of storing the energy. But bear in mind that you also have a high value because, you're close to the load and you're overcoming transmission distribution costs. But the point is well made that in most cases, when you try to do, an arbitrage, a comparison with the energy cost from your utility, storing that energy in a battery is not worthwhile. It's costing you more than it provides in a benefit, except for the markets that we like to go after and which we think are really important. And that's wherever a diesel generator, one form or the other, is involved.
Let's talk about those key markets.
Yeah, so we're not competing therefore against the grid, but against the moments where the grid is gone. These customers are grid connected, they love the grid, but they love their power also when it's out. So these are markets like in Indonesia or Vietnam or other places in Southeast Asia, or even in the United States in certain locations where people help themselves with a diesel genset. And then you're comparing yourself and competing with 55 cents per kilowatt hour, even for the larger ones, and up to 75 cents per kilowatt hour for the smaller diesel gensets. And I'm not just referring about the little red Honda that you get at the Home Depot. I'm referring against pretty sizable units that can run entire homes. And that's when you're competitive. That's when at 25 cents per kilowatt hour, all inclusive, including cost of storage, you can make a good business case. That's the market.
I get it. And penetration, how are you doing on getting into those markets? Where do you see moving forward for YouSolar?
That's a good question, and one that comes up all the time. Turns out you will be fighting, obviously, people that want to sell diesel. But there is an entire cottage industry of people that try to offer these customers a palette of solutions, which includes lead-acid battery storage systems, which includes a diesel generator. So they sometimes even install both, because you need a short bridge to when the diesel starts up, and then you need the diesel. And it's those channel partners, those channels to these customers that pretty much service and sell diesels and lead-acid battery systems to who you want to offer an alternative product, something else to offer to the customers. And as anyone trying to sell stuff, nothing is better than having a new product and a better product. So that's the way we want to get to market.
I get it. I mean, even Hawaii is running ads right now saying we are the first state in the country trying to go 100% renewable. That would be a big market for you, let alone what's happening in the middle of Africa, the middle of Latin America, where they just don't have a grid there.
Yeah, and even when the grid is there, it can be pretty weak. And the amount of money being spent on these diesel generators is just mind-boggling. It's about a $20 billion a year market. Pretty much it all goes up in smoke, right? There's no residual value for those folks. 90%, 80% of all of that cost is fuel. But then there are markets, established markets like Hawaii and others where, battery storage will just become increasingly important, because otherwise you cannot support these deep grid penetrations. On the other side, the good news is you can with the technology. What makes the battery so different today compared to the 80s when lead acid was the only choice is it's not possible, it is feasible, and for the most part economical, and so that's what people are looking at now.
Tell me about the future with YouSolar. Where are you taking the company?
So, our goal is to right now get the products into our pilot customer situations. I just returned from Bali, where we are working with the Green School, a beautiful boarding school, international school with local students as well that teaches sustainability. And YouSolar has been retained by the Green School to be their system designer and helping them with their goals of getting off the grid, or at least becoming as green as possible. And there we just installed a 6 kilowatt solar array on the new maker space for the students, which has 3D printing and the like. And we are using there our STEP microconverter technology to give them a much more shade-tolerant solar array. So that's one way for us to show that this type of solar architecture that we're introducing in the market has real value and really proves itself in these complex situations, in the tropics with haze, with shade. And then on the other side, we are getting ready to deploy these systems into customer homes. And what we're finding is that the best market for us is not the real market we want to go after, the diesel genset replacement, but customers here in the United States that are worried about wildfires, that want to be able to run their well pump when the power goes down, because that's the only source of water they have to do whatever they can to protect their home. So that's a market that's actually coming, for the forefront. And if you listen to the news this morning, insurance companies are becoming reluctant to insure these properties. But people have $1 million homes out there in forested areas or in beautiful countryside that burns nonetheless. And we give them a chance, a fighting chance, no pun intended, to defend their home in case of wildfire, because now with the solar battery power system that acts like a standalone diesel, they can run their well pump, they can have sprinklers running even after they abandon their home and hope for the best. So that's the market that we're also seeing here, and that's the market we are serving with our first pilots.
Arnold, well said. Thanks for being a guest on the show. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba.